What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Going the Distance podcast presented by ImmaculateSports.com. Twitter's at ImacSports.
Instagram is also at Impact Sports.
TikTok, YouTube, Immaculate Sports. It's episode 273 and some really good stuff to talk about because we're getting down to it in the NFL season. 2 more regular season games left before the playoffs. We know our college football, three games left. Oh, you know what? When I'm looking at the schedule, week 18 still TBD. I think that's where I got crossed up. So I was like TBD, whatever. Yes, 3 more regular season games left. Week 16 coming up. We know the full bracket for college football playoff, and now it's time to actually pick those games. And also the MLB offseason's been fun. Kyle's been telling us all about some of the smaller moves that have happened every week, but now we're going to talk about some of the bigger stuff too.
Yeah, a little bit of everything. I'd say this episode's a jack of all trades. But when it comes to podcast episodes, we'll be talking NFL, college football, and of course the MLB as well too, as we always do. Skyler will hit us on some portal QBs because it's been a pretty crazy college football world in general these past 2 weeks, even if you're not talking about the transfer portal. But some interesting stuff in the openers as well too, and I'll let you go ahead and get started with that.
Yeah, so last week when we found out the 12 teams that were going to be in the college football playoff, we were all on board with, okay, this is, considering the rules that they've set in place, these are the right 12 teams. But still, it kind of feels like a power 2, not a power 4. How are we going to make things more even? Well, 3 of the power conferences have immediately responded to that very quickly. This is from Brett McMurphy. He's kind of the Woj of college football on Twitter. You don't always agree with his takes, but he's got the news first, and it's usually right. So he says the ACC, the Big 12, and the SEC have all announced starting next year they will play 9 league games, plus 1 more of their non-conference will be from the Power 4. Nothing from the Big 10 yet. That's a little concerning, but maybe it's just because they have so many games with Toledo mapped out for a couple more years that they didn't want to upset them, which still shouldn't be a problem. But anyways, these guys should have been playing 9+ conference games already, so I'm glad they're on the same page there. Plus, 1 of these games is going to be Power 4, like I said. That's just going to create more chaos, better matchups, less San Diego State and Kansas, and more, I don't know, Texas Tech. So I'm excited for that.
Yeah. My opener is going to be the Packers-Broncos game, which I thought was a great game. Kind of got overshadowed because it was in the same window as Lions-Rams, the afternoon slate. But this game really had like a Super Bowl feel to it. I know obviously it's week 15. It wasn't a Super Bowl matchup. It wasn't what was on the line. And obviously if these teams were to match up now in the Super Bowl, we would see no Micah Parsons for the entirety of this game. But this game really had it all. I had 2, pretty good offenses. Both teams put up over 25 points. 2 defenses that have been great this entire year, have, all pro level players on that side of the ball. And Bo Nix and Jordan Love were just throwing it around. I know Jordan Love's stat line doesn't look the greatest with the 2 interceptions, but I felt like he was dealing against a really tough Broncos defense, and Bo Nix had perhaps maybe his best game of his career against that Packers defense, 23 for 34, 302, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. All 4 of the touchdowns go to different receivers, whether it's Cortland Sutton, Troy Franklin, little Jordan Humphrey, or even Michael Bandy. Bo Nix was dialed in, and this was really the game that I felt like made me believe in the Broncos. And now, especially with the Chiefs 100% out of it, I think there's a legitimate chance that the Broncos can win the Super Bowl. And that's not something I like hearing. It's not something I like saying, but it is a fact now. Anyways, moving on to our defensive player, and rookie of the week. Get us started, Skyler. Who is your player of the week?
I feel like we should mention Trevor Lawrence and Kyle Pitts, some absolute video game numbers for those guys. But my player of the week is the guy you just mentioned, Bo Nix. For a guy who's gotten so much shit over the last 2 years, he basically plays a perfect game against the Packers defense. 300 yards, 4 touchdowns, no picks, and no sacks. Brilliance from Bo Nix.
Yeah. Bo Nix probably should be the player of the week when it comes to magnitude. I feel like he's definitely the leader of that. But Trevor Lawrence was too crazy for me to not put him in there, especially with how the story has gone for Trevor Lawrence this season. It was like, crazy wins, but he was doing some dumb stuff, and they started losing some games. You're like, is Trevor Lawrence really the guy? And this past month, he's been like dialed in and been one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. Against the Jets, against the Jets is kind of like a precursor to saying this stuff doesn't matter. But 20 for 32, 330 yards, 5 touchdowns, no interceptions, as well as 50 rushing yards and a touchdown on the ground as well too. At 6 total tuds for the first overall pick 5 years ago now at this point. And if it was this easy, everybody would do it against the Jets. And Lamar Jackson had one of the worst games I've ever seen him play against the Jets just like less than a month ago. So I can't discredit him for doing that. He was great. And one of the main reasons why the Jags are also a team that could be in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, he absolutely shredded them. He looked like he was back at Clemson for sure.
Yeah, that was definitely his best game as a pro as well, too. Defense player of the week, though. Who'd you choose?
I haven't talked about this guy very much since he broke my guy Mike White's ribs a couple years ago. But Matt Milano is back from his own injury issues right now. And right when Buffalo needed another guy to step up against New England, he comes through. 10 tackles, 2 sacks, a forced fumble. So this is the second week in a row there's a massive Buffalo defensive play that flips the game and gets them the comeback win. It's huge for Buffalo, and maybe it's because we haven't talked about Matt Milano in a couple years, but I felt like he was the guy that stood out for me.
Yeah. This week in general, I didn't feel like there was a ton of defense in general played, to be honest with you. This has to be the week that has the most teams score over, I don't know, 30 points the entire year. I don't have the math for that or the stats to prove it, but it feels like in every single game, somebody scored at least 30 points. I went with D. Alford, though, cornerback on the Falcons. He had a diving interception late in that fourth quarter that really helped legitimize that Falcons comeback. And I know, the Falcons at this point are eliminated. Doesn't matter what they do, even if they win out and all the other teams lose out, they're not making the playoffs. They're not playing in late January, but the Bucs might. And the Panthers definitely gave a fuck that he made that interception, because if the Buccaneers lost and the Panthers won, then they would have had that division locked up. But regardless, D. Alford was a great play and was a big part of that Falcons comeback late in that game on Thursday Night Football.
That was a crazy game.
How about Rookie of the Week?
So Travion Henderson goes off again for the Patriots, but we have another quarterback that's actually worthy of talking about this week. So I gave the nod to Tyler Shuck. He's been playing very well for New Orleans. 270 passing yards this week, but he completes 75%. He doesn't turn the ball over. He made some big plays with his legs, and that's all you can ask for if you're New Orleans. Go 2-0 against your rival Carolina. That's obviously their season's done, but to know that Tyler Shuck could potentially be a guy that is maybe not the guy you put the hands of the franchise in, but a guy you could rely on for a couple of seasons. It's a pretty big week for him.
Yeah, Tyler Shuck, Rookie of the Week as well for me too. I've been saying it now for a couple weeks that this is a guy I really like watching play football. And he did this. I know it wasn't some crazy offensive performance. They only put up 20 points, but outside of Chris Olave, let me just read who he's throwing the football to. Devon Bele, who's also like a 27-year-old second-year player. Audric Estime, Notre Dame legend, but not an NFL legend. Kevin Austin Jr., I don't know who that is. Jawan Johnson is still hanging around. Jack Stoll, Mason Tipton, Devin Neal, rookie running back. So he's not doing it with the craziest supporting cast. There is no run game. And the Panthers defense has been decent, I'd say, over the past 3 or 4 weeks. Tyler Shuck don't care. 5 straight games for him playing well, and he's my Rookie of the Week. I'm bought in on Tyler Shuck for sure. Definitely one of the more, if not the most polished rookie that we've seen at the quarterback position in quite some time. But that is also probably because he's 26. Anyways, our top 5 MVP. We haven't done this in a few weeks, so it's good to check in, especially now with the MVP, getting announced in a couple of months. Any honorable mentions before we get into the top 5?
Yeah, a couple guys that we've already talked about a little bit that are having way better seasons than I thought they would, like Trevor Lawrence, Jordan Love, and then some wild card picks, Puka Nakua, JSN, and James Cook is back up there in the statistics.
Yeah, I have seven guys, maybe eight that I want to shout out. CMC and JSN, two ridiculous years. Puka Nakua, most dominant wide receiver in the NFL right now. They're going to need him on Thursday, likely with no Devontae Adams. Jared Goff has, had enough crazy games. I think now that he's worthy of an honorable mention. Jalen Hurts, had a terrible game on Monday Night Football. But pretty much besides that, every other game he's been really good this season. Doesn't turn over the football a ton. Jordan Love, I think, is up there now at this point with how he's performed. And Aaron Rodgers has actually had a pretty good season as well, too. Not doing it with the crazy supporting cast as well. Really, like Jalen Warren's been a backup running back for the entirety of his career. And he's doing that with him and Kenneth Gainwell. I know they've both been good, but you got to credit and where credit's due. And then I guess I could say Myles Garrett.
Yeah.
Because he does have 21 and a half sacks, but this is basically proving why the MVP will never go to a defensive player. Because with all that, the Browns still have 3 wins. So if Myles Garrett was on the Packers, like he might legitimately have like 30 sacks right now with them being up all the time and being in pass situations and whatnot. But to see him doing that with 21, with how bad the Browns are is pretty ridiculous. So Myles Garrett, shout out to you as well too. But on to the top 5.
Yeah, I am pretty sure that Lawrence Taylor was the last defensive player to win it, so that should be enough to prove it right there. I don't have Myles Garrett in my top 5, but I'm going to kick it off with Caleb Williams of the Bears. Might have sounded crazy a couple of weeks ago, but this kid has got it figured out. The Bears are pretty much offensively cursed for their entire existence, but Caleb and Ben Johnson clearly do not care. 21 touchdowns, won't be leading anything, but only 6 interceptions. And right now, I trust Caleb Williams just as much as I trust Jalen Hurts and Jared Goff and whoever else we had in this spot earlier this season. He's been just as good as we thought he would be after going number 1.
Number 5, just hanging on to his non-QB representation in the MVP world. It's Jonathan Taylor. I know it's 4 straight losses now for the Colts, but for them to even be in that game against the Seahawks, top-rated defense in the NFL, have a 44-year-old Phillip Rivers at quarterback, is solely because of Jonathan Taylor. And they knew that he was getting the football every single play. And I know it only turned out to 3.5 yards per carry, but he was doing a lot to get those 3.5 yards per carry, 87 total yards on the ground. And he's the only reason why that offense is still moving at all. Because if it was, Amir Abdullah back there, and, no shot on Amir Abdullah, he's made some big plays for the Raiders, but they're not moving the football like the way that they are, or way that they did this past game against the Seahawks. So Jonathan Taylor leading the league in rushing still is my only non-quarterback representative in the MVP race post Week 15. Number 4.
So number 4, I got Jonathan Taylor basically making this a 3-man race for me. But it's just unfortunate that this is turning into a what-if scenario because Jonathan Taylor was definitely making a case before he started seeing 8 to 10-man boxes every snap. He's still first in rushing yards and touchdowns, but the way that the offense looks without Daniel Jones and the way that James Cook has emerged down the stretch makes me think it's not possible anymore.
Number 4, if you're 12-2, I think your quarterback's got to be on here somewhere. So I did put Bo Nix as my number 4 guy. His worst game of the year came on Thursday Night Football early in November, where he threw a pick or 2 picks and had only 1 touchdown against the Raiders. Since then, he's only had 1 turnover in 4 games, and those come with wins against the Chiefs, Commanders, that crazy Sunday Night Football game, a Raiders game that doesn't really matter, but then also that Packers game this past Sunday. He's been playing his best football in the biggest part of the year for them. And I know with the Broncos, you could say, their defense carries them, but their offense has been putting up 20-plus points consistently throughout this year. So, Bo Nix, is he the best, 4th best quarterback in the league? No. But Mahomes is hurt. Other guys aren't looking that well, so I think Bo Nix is deserving of a spot. Number 3.
Yeah, I'm kind of giving Bo Nix the Jalen Hurts treatment here, even though it's not his fault. He's coming off his best game. But I did decide to keep Drake May at number three. This is the same spot I had him last time. Still top five in yards, touchdowns, QBR. I am not sure if he's going to win it after losing to Josh Allen, but he definitely deserves a spot as a finalist for everything he's done up until this point.
Yeah, Drake May is the last of the real people in here that I think don't have a chance to win it anymore. He's my number three guy as well too. Still a ridiculous season, of course. And if they beat Buffalo and he has the game that he has, even though it wasn't some crazy stat line, I think we're definitely looking at him still having a chance to win it, and him probably being ahead of the guy that we both have at number two. But it's not that way. And Drake May probably ended his MVP chances with this game, losing this game at home against Buffalo.
Mm-hmm.
Number two.
Yeah, number two is going to be Josh Allen. After the last 2 weeks, I don't think there's a great argument against me if I say this is clearly the most talented player in the NFL right now. Over the last 2 weeks against Cincinnati and New England, Josh Allen has 7 touchdowns to 0 picks, 2 big comeback wins when things were looking really bad. And I think there is still a path for him to win it. I don't think there's a path for Drake May anymore, but we'll get to number one and we'll talk about what that path is. But considering the up and downs Josh Allen has had this season, it's still fantastic stuff we're seeing from him.
Yeah, Josh Allen's my number two as well. Two back-to-back weeks now where it's just those ridiculous performances against. Well, the Bengals defense isn't great, but the Patriots defense has definitely stifled a lot of QBs this year. Not Geno Smith, but a bunch of other QBs this year. And with his performance and getting that win in Buffalo, considering the way that it looked, 4 minutes left to go in the first half, it was pretty ridiculous. Like you said, probably the most talented player in the NFL, and I think he's legitimately has a chance to win this, and he's doing it with 9 wide receiver threes around him. He doesn't have a single guy that I would even consider wide receiver 2 at this point. I know Kincaid and Dawson Knox have had some big performances these past couple of weeks, but yeah, they still ain't shit. So number 2 on to number 1.
All right. So number one, sticking with Matt Stafford. And of course, right after we talk about Matt Stafford 3 or so weeks ago, he plays the worst game of the season against Carolina. But he did come back really strong, right? Back-to-back games of 40-plus points for these guys. He still got 37 touchdowns, only 5 picks. And I do think that Matt Stafford holds his own destiny for MVP because they have the biggest game of the season coming up on Thursday. That's against Seattle for first place, number 1 seed in the NFC. If Stafford can do that again, maybe not 40 points against a great defense, but get the win, play really well without Devontae Adams, that would be his, Heisman moment, if you will, his clutch MVP moment. And I think that would keep him above Josh Allen. If they flame out, then I would consider switching the two. But right now, I'm going to give Matt Stafford a shot here.
Yeah, Matt Stafford's the MVP for me. And I don't really think there's too many possibilities or realities where he doesn't win the award now at this point. I think it's been such a dominant year that it's just like, man, even if he has, 3 games in a row where he has a pick and only 2 touchdowns in comparison to his normal, 4.5, it feels like he's throwing. I still think he wins it. He's got 37 touchdowns with just 5 picks. He's been dominant the entire year, with the exception of really 1 game against Carolina in the rain, where just things didn't break his way. There was a tipped interception in there as well too. Just a crazy story for a 37-year-old to be having his best season in the NFL when he's 37 years old. Just the ultimate gunslinger. I wouldn't say last, but part of a dying breed in the NFL when it comes to quarterbacks is him and guys like Dak Prescott and guys that really just don't care and just sling it in there and usually works out for them. But Stafford's having it all work out for him this year. Number 1 for sure.
Very reminiscent of the Heisman race.
Yeah. Although I'd say Stafford's numbers are this year's Heisman, the numbers were down all across the board. I think Stafford's numbers are good enough where he could win against one of those good years from somebody else. Maybe not, an Aaron Rodgers 50 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, but not a lot of people winning against Aaron Rodgers that year.
Yep.
Anyways, we've got a college football bracket playoff predictions to do. And the bracket's set. We already know who the teams are playing. Last time that we did this bracket wasn't set. It was using some of our predictions in the conference championships on where teams would be. Now we know exactly where every team is. We're going to do the whole bracket as it is. Starting off in that first round, JMU goes up to Oregon in a 12-5 matchup. How does this game play out, Skyler?
It would be very cool, but I just don't think it's happening. I think the Ducks could probably run the ball on every single play and still beat the Dukes here. JMU's got a very highly ranked defense, but what often happens in this kind of game is that even if there are NFL level players on the other side on defense, the trenches are just uncomparable in this kind of game. I got Oregon winning big.
Yeah, this isn't going to be close. I have Oregon by a lot here, is what I said. If you need any, reason or why, just go back to last year's first round playoffs. We thought a lot of these teams were a lot closer than this year, I would say, and they were all blowouts. There was really not a good game in that first round of the playoffs. And I think Oregon is the only team that's playing this weekend that has a legitimate chance to not even a legitimate chance, but a chance to win the national championship. They're the best team playing this weekend. And so I think they beat the worst team playing this weekend by a lot of points, which is JMU. Number 9 versus number 8, Alabama goes to Norman, Oklahoma. How does this play out?
Yeah, so the Sooners have won every single time since the relocation. So being at home in this one, I feel like I have to roll against the Tide once again. They just haven't really played well down the stretch. Do you trust Ty Simpson to make big plays against this defense? I don't, because not even necessarily because of Ty Simpson. Not saying he's a bad quarterback, but Alabama can't run the ball. It's going to be only Ty Simpson. John Mateer just needs to not make that first big mistake, and they should completely shut down Alabama. I got this game like 16-10 Oklahoma.
This is a game that's on Friday. The other 3 are on Saturday. I'm not going to be able to watch this game, actually. I'll be busy Friday night. But regardless, I'm not too upset about not being able to watch this game, because this game's going to suck. It's going to be like 4-5 or something like that, which isn't even a football score unless you get 2 safeties. But that's how bad I think this game's going to be. Both these offenses have sputtered, consistently now for 2 months. I'd say both teams led by their defenses. It's not going to be a good game. There's going to be sloppy quarterback play from prospects that even have some draft pull to them. The run games I don't love. The defenses are good on both sides. Obviously, Oklahoma has a bit of an edge, but I say Alabama wins this game just because of their experience of playing these bigger teams a little bit more often. I'll go Alabama wins by a few points in a very low-scoring game.
Yeah, this is like the only pick'em game of the entire tournament.
Yeah. Number 11, Tulane goes to Ole Miss. Is it Oxford?
Yeah.
That's what it is?
Yeah.
Oxford, Mississippi? Yeah. They're going to Oxford to play Ole Miss.
Yeah, I think Ole Miss is going to be fine without Lane Kiffin in the first round. Chambliss, the rest of the offense, they got something to prove with all the chaos of the last month. And Jake Retzlaff on the other side has got a little bit of Maddox-Madsen disease. As soon as he leaves the American Conference, he just throws way too many picks. So once again, I think Ole Miss wins big, despite however you want to look at it with the transfers and the coach moves.
Yeah, Ole Miss handled this team very early in the year. It was 45-10 when they played. We actually saw this exact matchup, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Same location, same quarterbacks. I don't think it's going to be as blowout because I do think Lane Kiffin had, something to do with that win. And now that he's gone and Tulane's been able to keep their head coach throughout this playoff run, I think some adjustments will be made. Is it 35 points worth of adjusting? No. But it could be, an extra 10 to 15 points in there. So I'll go Ole Miss probably by about the spread, 17.5. On to Miami at Texas A&M, College Station.
Yeah, playing at home is such a big deal in college football that I've definitely been leaning Texas A&M for a while now. And Marcel Reed is a big time playmaker when you compare him to Carson Beck. So I can see this being a race to 30 points, which is something the 7 seed has done against way tougher teams, way tougher schedule than Miami has. So I am going to take Texas A&M by 10, 30 to 20 type of game.
Yeah, this game will be kind of fun, I'd say. But these teams have to play Ohio State next, so I don't think there's going to be too much fun knowing that if you win, you're going to have to go through that. And I think it's very fair to say that both these teams will not beat Ohio State, whether they win this game or not, convincingly or not. Um, I do think it'll be one of those crazy college football games where you see all these crazy plays happens, and maybe the score gets run up a little bit on both teams. But I'll have Texas A&M winning by a field goal. I know their offense has sputtered recently. They had that crazy comeback, 3-4 weeks ago, and then had that loss to Texas. I think some off time has definitely helped them, but I don't know how much. I'll say they win by a field goal. On to the second round, starting off with Oregon, not at Texas Tech, unfortunately. I wish they would do that, but versus Texas Tech in the Capital One Orange Bowl.
Yeah, my first note was there's a 99% chance this is going to be the Orange Bowl, but man, what a matchup. This might be the toughest pick of the entire bracket, but I am going to stick with Oregon. We said it last time. If it's not in the Big Ten, Oregon usually has the better matchup. And Texas Tech is an awesome team. Morton had a good year at quarterback, but the stuff that Dan Lanning is going to throw at him in this matchup is going to be nothing like BYU's defense. So I'm going to go with the guys that have been here before and have a little bit of revenge inside of them. I got Ducks 31-27.
Yeah, this game is all about familiarity for me. When you look at Oregon, how many teams have they played like Texas Tech? Probably a million. How many teams has Texas Tech played that are like Oregon?
None.
Big fat zero. I say Oregon by at least a couple touchdowns in this one. I don't think it's gonna be super close. Maybe this is just me being a Big 12 hater in the form of the modern college football. Big 12 just isn't what it is, or what it was 15, 20 years ago. The offense is cool, but the defense needs to be stout versus Oregon, and I don't see that happening at all. So I have Oregon by a couple touchdowns. Next up, the best college football game on the schedule, at least the name, the Rose Bowl in Pasadena. Number 8, Oklahoma for you. Number 9, Alabama for me. Going against number 1, Indiana Hoosiers.
So yeah, I do got Oklahoma playing the Hoosiers for the Rose Bowl. And I think this could be a trap game either way. We've seen teams like Alabama or Oklahoma go on runs like this because of their defense, like Notre Dame last year, Georgia a couple times with Stetson Bennett. But I just don't think that John Mateers played well enough to beat the number 1 team in the nation. Probably the same with your pick too here. Mendoza is going to win the Rose Bowl on his own. I will say, don't forget their best pass rusher for Indiana is out for the season, celebrating after the game. Really rough one. I do have Indiana close, 23-17.
Regardless of how that first round game goes, if it's Alabama or Oklahoma, I think Indiana comes out with the victory in this one for sure. I just feel like there isn't that national championship drive from either of those teams this year, and Indiana definitely has that. And, considering what we saw in the Ohio State game, as a game that we've already talked about on here, but at least to me, it really felt like it was a cool story. Indiana's here, but they're not going to beat Ohio State, even with the spread is what it was, is like 4.5 points. It's like, okay, like let me hammer Ohio State. That's not how it goes. Indiana wins. That shows me they're here for sure. I don't think they're going to be hit by a trap game at this point in the year. So I have Indiana by 10+ points. Next up, Ole Miss without Lane Kiffin versus Georgia in the All-State Sugar Bowl. Is that the one that's in Atlanta?
Yes.
Because if it is,
New Orleans.
Still, regardless, doesn't matter. It's going to be Georgia probably for both of us. But how do you have this playing out?
Yeah, classic Sugar Bowl matchup, of course. They played a close one earlier this season, but Georgia's on an absolute tear right now. And I'd say they beat Ole Miss just as bad as they did to Alabama the other day. I guess that's 2 weeks ago now. But I got Bulldogs big, 31-14. They're going to shut them down.
Yeah, this is Georgia by a lot for me in this one. Bulldogs playing their best football of the season. Ole Miss has, reasonable doubt when it comes to this game, considering that they don't have their head coach. I just don't think they could be prepared. That's nothing against their, current head coach that they have right now, but Kirby Smart's going to have those boys rolling. So Bulldogs up big. They win by a lot. Next up, TAMU versus Ohio State. You had TAMU winning, right?
Yeah, no.
Okay.
Oh, no, sorry. I thought you meant against Ohio State. Yes, I had them in this game.
Okay.
Yeah, no, they're not going to beat Ohio State. No. I will say, though, the number 2 seed has been kind of cursed in college football throughout the years, but Ohio State has got to be so pissed off about losing to Indiana. They're going to come back at home, completely shut down the Aggie RPO game, and you just can't run the ball against those guys. So I got Ohio State 34-13, very similar to the Georgia Ole Miss game.
Yeah, this could be a shutout. This could legitimately be a game that just is 21-0, and you never really see Texas A&M do anything on offense because of how good Ohio State's defense is. Even for Indiana going up against Ohio State, they didn't have a crazy offensive game. Put up 13 points, and it felt like they were doing good. That entire game, and never really felt like they were, handled too much by Ohio State. But regardless, Ohio State wins this one big time. Never really a competition here. On to semifinals, which we have Oregon versus Indiana here in this first one. The Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl, a game we've already seen this year between these two teams.
Yeah, this would be a really weird Peach Bowl. I guess they saved the Fiesta for the next game, knowing who was most likely to be there. But, Indiana gives Oregon their only loss of the season. It was a great game. Oregon has been on a tear since then. They had 40 plus on USC. They had a defensive masterclass in Washington. I think they're just as balanced as Indiana, making this a great game. And maybe I'm going to regret this one since they've never won anything, but I think Oregon would get them back in a rematch. I think Dan Lanning is the type of coach I would not want to let watch my film for 4 months and get a second crack at that same exact team. Dante Moore needs to be great in this one. He needs to be just as good as Fernando, the Heisman winner. But I am going to do it. I'm going to take Oregon 38-35 in the craziest game of the year.
Yeah, I think this definitely has a good chance to be the most fun game to watch this year, especially with good offenses on both sides and some defensive injuries going on. But if there's a coach that I would not want to have watch my film for 4 months over Dan Lanning, it's probably Kurt Cignetti. And the stuff that he's done this year has just been ridiculous. Not just this year, but his entire career. So I have Indiana probably at similar score, 38-35, but with them getting the victory instead of Oregon. On the other side, this will be the pro talent game of the year in the Verbo Fiesta Bowl. Georgia versus Ohio State, always a matchup that we welcome as college football fans. How do you think this one plays out?
Yeah, amazing matchup. Rematch of one of the best 14 playoff games ever is Justin Fields against Stetson Bennett. And this is also what I wanted to be the Natty before Indiana won the Big Ten. Georgia is on fire, and they've been able to win with much worse quarterbacks than Gunnar Stockton in the past. But like I picked it 2 weeks ago, I do think Ohio State would beat them. They have unlimited numbers of options to go to on offense, and their defense might actually be better than Georgia's for the first time in a while this season. So I am going to stick with Ohio State in a low-scoring game.
Yeah, I think Ohio State actually has an edge on Georgia on both sides of the ball in this one. And it's not common for a team, in any other team, to have a better defense than Georgia, but I do think this is the year that I give their defense a +2 on the Ohio State side. And then on offense, I don't think these offenses are super ridiculous at this point. Ohio State has a ton of talent, but it is still really, really young with saying, and even, Jeremiah Smith's a sophomore. Like, it's not like he's some, 5th-year senior or something like that. Regardless, still, the best receiver in the country. But I have Ohio State winning this one. I'll say it's like 23-17. Very much just feels like you're watching a game on Sunday, though. Like it's not a standard college football game. This is pro talent, both sides of the football, 5-star versus 5-star, blue blood versus blue blood, and Ohio State comes out on top. Which sets us back up, at least me, David versus Goliath for this national championship that we've already seen once. Indiana versus Ohio State. You have Oregon versus Ohio State. How does this go?
So I kind of hinted at it earlier. Oregon finally gets their chance at revenge from last year's Rose Bowl. And Oregon, I think, would play them much tougher this season. But I still think that Ohio State has the best roster in college football once again. Dante Moore would have a really tough time against this defense. So if Ohio State just gives Julian Sands some time, I think these guys could pick apart any team in the country. I got the Buckeyes winning 24-20. I think, well, I won't say if this would be a better game than a rematch of the Big Ten championship, but I don't know, maybe a little first round bye curse from Indiana and wanting to see this rematch again. Would be a good game. Ohio State would get them again, though.
1 versus 2 for me. I have Indiana versus OSU or Ohio State. I don't know why I guess they are OSU, but still, no one really calls them that. Them already playing each other in a big game, I think definitely favors both teams because you get the film, you get the live game reps on the speed of both these teams. But I do think in that Big Ten championship game, there's a lot of variables that went Indiana's way. You could look, first off, just the missed field goal. And I think also Fernando Mendoza, played perfect in the last 3 quarters of that game. Asking him to play perfect again versus Ohio State in order to get a victory, he could do it, but it's very, very tough. And Ohio State, I think on their offensive side, has a bit more leeway with having to play that good, and I trust them a little bit more to get that. So I'll have Ohio State by 1 point, 21-20. One of those. Hopefully, it's a game-winning drive to end it, field goal, whatever, however it happens. But yeah, I think it's gonna be a good game. But I have Ohio State and the Buckeyes going back to back.
Yep.
Onward to the MLB free agency. Winners and losers is what we're doing today. These could be, very specific, or they can be very broad. We have a wide range of 3 to 5 each. So we'll get started with your first winner. Skyler, who do you have?
Okay, my first winner of the offseason is going to be the Toronto Blue Jays. They got so close to beating the Dodgers, and they're not content with that. They see that the window is open. I love seeing that. Cease and Rogers were big-time names this offseason. Cody Ponce is coming off a legendary run in Korea. They needed some pitchers who aren't 40 to throw some good innings for them, and I think so far they've done exactly what they needed to do. Now we'll see if there's a Bo replacement coming in the future here.
Yeah, you said it, so I'll say it as well here. Blue Jays are a winner, clear winner for me. Dylan Cease, Cody Ponce, Tyler Rogers, and Shane Bieber getting re-signed for them as well too. They're also still in on Kyle Tucker, which is pretty ridiculous. This feels like the year that the Blue Jays went from, kind of the joke of the big free agent market where it's like, oh, they're in on them, but do they really have a chance to sign them? Never really went that way. This year, it feels like that could actually happen, and things can actually happen where they turn out in the Blue Jays' favor. Never really felt that way before. So the Blue Jays, my first big winner of the offseason. Next winner for you.
All right, let's go with Edwin Diaz. $69 million to come close out games for the best team in baseball. He's going to get way more opportunities than he would in New York to be on the big stage, potentially get the last out of the World Series. This is what you dream of when you're a big-time closer. So I think it's a perfect fit, even though 90% of the league is going to hate it.
I don't have Diaz as a specific winner. I have closers as a winner for me. It feels like a position each year that random guys excel in and guys that you thought were sure things fail. But 3 out of this top 7 contracts given out so far have been to relieving pitchers, specifically closers, of course. Edwin Diaz, Devin Williams, and Robert Suarez. Maybe that's just the first domino to fall in free agency every single year because there is no, break the market type guy. And if there was, then it would have been this year. But they went quick. And at this point, I'd say that, the top tier relievers are gone. Um, they got their money quick, and that's a big thing for them. I think they all, landed in closer spots for the most part. I know Suarez. I've heard reports that Iglesias is still the closer, but you're not paying, 3 for 48 or whatever you're paying Suarez for him to be your setup guy. I think he takes over Iglesias' role, and closers in general are a big winner. They're making a lot of money. Who's your next winner?
Yeah, I would say Suarez definitely a big winner too. I didn't include him. I guess we could tie him in with Edwin Diaz, sure. One more team I have here before I have a couple of players is the Seattle Mariners. They're an interesting one, but I think so far I would consider them a winner. My friend Dilly, Seattle fan, may disagree with me. He was very excited for Harry Ford. But to bring back Josh Naylor on a reasonable deal and then to go take a shot on something you really need, Jose Ferrer, it might be a risk, but what we do know is that's what they need. He's left-handed. He throws gas. People like you who understand all of the new numbers, expect him to get a lot better than what the surface level numbers say. So I think Seattle understood. Maybe they were listening to us saying they weren't going to get back to the to the World Series, but hey, you guys need to get some more veterans in the building, man, and that's what they're working on.
I thought about putting the Mariners here. I held off. So I'll go in a direction that I think that you don't have. That way that we don't align.
Yeah.
Here exactly. I have former MLB pitchers that then went to the KBO/MPB and then are now coming back to the MLB as free agents. Four of them specifically: Cody Ponce, Anthony Kay, Drew Anderson, and Foster Griffin, who have signed so far, and they've all gotten over market expectations, which is a good thing. And I feel like if this was 3 to 5 years ago, there'd be a lot of are these guys really, going to do something in the MLB? Get the big contract. I don't know who really paved the way for these guys to get back into getting good money. Maybe it's Eric Fetty. We saw him come back and be really, really good his first year. Not have a crazy second year, but still, effective as a starting pitcher. Maybe it's just, you have more MLB scouts in these countries now because of just the Japanese-born and the Korean-born players that are now coming over, and these guys are seeing more and are a bit more of sure things when they come over. But I didn't expect 30 mil for Cody Ponce. I didn't expect Anthony Kay to get a multi-year deal. So I say those guys are winners, and maybe it's starting to become a more of a viable option for these American-born pitchers to go back over, or not go back over, but go over to Asia, play a couple of years, and then get their big payday back in the States once they perform. Who's your next winner?
Yeah. No, that's a good point for sure. Those guys are getting serious money now. And one guy I'm still waiting for, if you remember Carter Stewart, Braves took him like number 8. He's been in Japan, was pitching very well, got hurt, and then was pitching well again. So I think he's got a couple more years before he comes. But same idea, right? A guy like that could get some big money now. Yeah. Anyways, I mean, we're on the same page here with pitching, at least. The pitching has been very heavy to start out this offseason. We'll start off with Grayson Rodriguez. I think he's a winner. I'm not going to give the teams of this trade a win or loss yet because, maybe there is injury concern. Maybe that's why this thing happened the way it did. But for Grayson Rodriguez specifically, good for him. Get out of Baltimore. That system feels pretty cursed at the moment. Not that the Angels are any better in that department, but one thing is for sure, the Angels need to find a frontline starter any way they can. So I'm excited to see Grayson rip it, go as long as he can, see if he could be that guy.
I don't have G-Rod as one of my winners. So I'll go in a direction that I don't think that you have for your fifth winner, and that is the White Sox. It's not much, but they won the lottery, and they're guaranteed Rock Cholowski, and him to be, the pick that they likely take at number 1 if all things go according to plan. And he is, about as lock as a number 1 overall pick that we've seen in recent years. Kind of going back to Adley, I'd say is similar. Really that type of sure thing type of prospect. And he's immediately, going to be a top 10 prospect on Pipeline, Baseball America, Fangraphs, wherever you name it, like consensus top 10 prospect, maybe even higher than that. Should reach the big leagues the latest, 2028 opening day for them if they get him in mid 2026. And I think the White Sox got to be pumped up for that, considering they already have Colson Montgomery as a guy that's playing up the middle as well, too. That's guaranteed now pretty much to be your middle infield going into the 2030s. And for a rebuild that, at least in my eyes, has started to see the very early returns from players working out well, I think this is a big W for them. And them getting Rock, really solidifies them as a potential team to be looking out for once we get into that, 2030 situation. And your last winner.
I almost put the White Sox on here. I figured you would have them. So I'm going to go with another pitcher move who is very, very dear to us, Sonny Gray. Why not mention him too? We know that he loves pitching on the big stage. We know he doesn't like the Yankees. That sounds like a perfect fit in Boston to me, a team that's been begging for some starting pitching. So I thought I'd mention him too, just because the pitchers have been moving a lot more than the other guys so far.
My last winner is going to be Baltimore Oriole fans. Seem like after this past year and their, spending history, that there is a legitimate chance Adley's gone, Gunnar and Holiday don't get locked up, and you're looking at what could have been a super promising, generation of Baltimore baseball just fizzle out and not turn into anything because of just incompetence by the front office and not looking at starting pitching seriously. Them giving Pete Alonso 150 mil says, I know it's not pitching, but it says otherwise in the way that they want to compete and be good. And that really, really shocked me. It felt like, hearing that they were in on Pete Alonso or Framber Valdez, it was like, oh, that's a cool story. Kind of similar to like the Pirates being in on Carl Schwarber. Like, okay, that's interesting. But them being actually in is really, really cool. And I think the fans are obviously super happy to see Pete Alonso in a Baltimore Orioles jersey. They still have needs to go. And getting Framber Valdez would be a huge thing for them. But now I think there's a legitimate chance that they sign him. And I didn't think there was a legitimate chance of them signing him 2 weeks ago. So Baltimore Orioles fans have to be pumped up. And that is my last winner of MLB free agency so far. MLB
If they
offseason.
get a premier starter, they would definitely be on my list in a month.
Yeah. On to the losers.
All right, so I have 3 teams and an honorable mention. I don't want to kill a team because there's still so much time to go. I feel like I know we're more used to it. The past couple of years have been slower, but I'm going to kick off with my honorable mention, Munetaka Murakami. Maybe there's nothing to it, but this is a guy I thought that would be signed very quickly. And maybe we don't know the market of the hitters yet. Obviously, there's been a lot more pitchers moved so far, but the rumor of the contract and the team that wants to go after him, not $1 billion from the Dodgers anymore. We're talking about 6 years to the Angels and stuff like that. Stuff that you've hinted at before, but based off the advanced metrics, he strikes out a lot. So far, I think he's kind of a loser. But we'll see the numbers when we get them.
Yeah. I also have Murakami. Munetaka Murakami is one of my losers. He only has about a week left to sign. I feel like that's something that's pretty underrated here. Like, I think it's the 22nd, if I'm not mistaken, on the day that his posting period ends. And he's not signed by then he goes back to Japan, I think, for a year and then can get posted again. But it really feels like a situation that we don't see too often from the foreign baseball side, but we see a lot in the MLB where you have a contract year and you just don't perform in that year. It feels like that right now, and there's not really a situation where Murakami's going to sign, a 1-year deal, prove it to Miami or something like that. Like, that's not going to happen. I think he'd rather go back to Japan and play a year, I'd assume, and then come back over and float his market out again. But I am also surprised that we haven't seen a team just kind of, throw something out there to him that he accepts at this point, because now the teams have a bit more leverage than what they did, 40 days ago. I'm also curious what he's expecting market wise. And obviously, him and the teams haven't aligned yet, or him and his agent haven't aligned yet. But he's been a loser for me so far. Who's your next loser?
Okay, I'm glad I wasn't off base there because he still has some time to sign. We'll see, but yeah, not ideal from his side so far. Now we'll get into a couple teams that I think need to do some more work. We'll start off with an obvious one: New York Mets. Right now, I don't think this roster could even go 500. They probably got something in the works because they're the Mets and they spend a bunch of money, but they just lost Diaz. Polar Pete, Brandon Nimmo in a trade is an interesting move. We'll see how Semien fits over there. And Polanco, I don't know about that one, man. So that's all I'll say for now. Like I said, I don't want to kill the teams because there's time, but right now I don't see a direction with the Mets. They still have pitching issues too, of course.
My loser here in relation to that is David Stearns in the mind of Mets fans is a loser right now. My perceptions of the Mets moves, I've been actually quite okay with them. I think if you give Pete Alonso 5 years, 150 million, that's a huge overpay. Like he's a great hitter, one of those four hitters for the next 5 to 10 years type guys. But he's not worth 150 mil, like a Kyle Schwarber contract. Or I don't even think Kyle Schwarber is worth the Kyle Schwarber contract. But regardless, I'm okay with them not giving him that money. I know it sucks for the fans. But Jorge Polanco, who they brought in, had one of the biggest, if not the biggest, K percent drop that we've ever seen from a hitter year over year this past year. And maybe it's just, a fluke thing, or maybe he was cheating up in Seattle. We don't know, it could be possible. But if he goes and does what he did in 2025 with New York in 2026 and 27 for 20 mil instead of 35 mil, I think it makes sense there. Getting rid of the Brandon Nimmo contract, which was ridiculously long, and bringing in Semien. I know Semien isn't, this six-war player that he was previously in his career, but if he plays Gold Glove defense at second base and gives you 20 homers and slightly above average offense, you're quite okay with that to get off the books for him in just a couple of years. And I think that's something with the Mets' financial ability I'm good with. Also, getting rid of Brandon Nimmo opens up a spot for Carson Bench to play center field for them potentially this year. One of the biggest risers on prospect boards throughout the entire year. Had a great year in the minors, 22, 23 years old, and I think could legitimately be a big-time player for them in the future. Getting rid of Diaz is definitely a move I don't love. I think that is something that I probably would have disagreed with in terms of Stearns. When you have the money to go pay a guy like that, I'd do it. And I don't think it was necessarily an overpay by the Dodgers either. That was a market they definitely could have tapped into. But bringing in Devin Williams, he had a really wonky year last year. A lot of things didn't go his way early in the season, kind of screwed up his numbers throughout. But we know Devin Williams is nasty. And the Mets pitching lab, especially in the bullpen, has been pretty ridiculous in the span of the last 3 or 4 years, pulling out guys like Huascar Brazaban or Brooks Raley or even Dickie Lovelady and turning them into guys, or Max Kranick, whoever it may be. Like, guys perform in their pen, and I think Devin Williams, the stuff that he's had, is going to be just fine. I don't think they've done enough in the starting pitching, but not a lot of teams have done much in starting pitching so far. So there's still a ton of time left. They can go get a Suarez. They can go get a Valdez if they want. They can get anybody because they're all still out there. I know David Stearns has been under fire. A lot of people think he should be fired already. But I'm under the impression that he is just making smarter moves and not just writing a blank check to everybody this season, which I like. But he's a loser in New York right now. That's fair. Your next loser.
Yeah. Let's go with the San Diego Padres. The rumor is that something big is on the way here, but they've done nothing. Cease and Suarez were expected to leave, but for a team that loves to wheel and deal, they just haven't made any notable moves yet. They had some free agents, and there's time, of course, but these were supposed to be the guys that challenged the Dodgers, and your current team is not going to do that. And now one of the biggest pickups they had of the midseason, Mason Miller, allegedly on the trade block. I am not quite sure what's going to happen here with San Diego, but I do know there's a lot of holes to fill. You don't want to have to bring back Graham Polly to hit fifth for you on opening day, right?
Well, Grant Pauly is a Marlin, but
No, I know, but like trade for him back
yeah,
just because that's your guy or something. I
yeah,
don't know.
that's
That's
fair.
in the mind of the Padres.
Yeah, no, that's he was Grant Pauly was the one guy on opening day rosters that I had never heard of before in my life. So that's fair. My next loser, and I'm surprised you haven't said them yet. Maybe they're coming up. It's the Yankees for me. They haven't done anything. They brought back Trent Grisham. They brought back Ahmed Rosario. Um, but who's playing for this team? Like as of right now, the projected shortstop opening day is Jose Caballero, and I know that's because Volpe's hurt. But even with Volpe, is he the guy that you want? Ryan McMahon's under contract, but maybe you shouldn't be playing him at third base if you want to make a World Series run. Bullpen, I trust the Yankees to turn guys into whatever, but they haven't done anything there when they could have. Starting rotation, as you've seen, it doesn't hurt to have 9 starting pitchers when you can afford them. We know the Yankees can, and they just have not done that right now. And right now, currently slated, Alan Winans is in their 5 spot of the rotation. Maybe that's because of injuries with Garrett Cole, Rodon, and Clark Schmidt, but they haven't done anything. And the rest of the AL East has made moves. Even the Rays, which don't have the biggest pockets, but have always found a way to utilize talent in a productive way. Blue Jays are writing blank checks. The Orioles are writing blank checks. And the Red Sox are wheeling and dealing in the trade conversation. So Yankees, big time loser for me so far this year.
So yeah,
That's my spot.
number 3.
Who's your next loser?
I jumped the gun on you there for a second, but I want to mention the Yankees because I didn't put them on my list. You're right. I agree with you. They're definitely getting outbid by teams that shouldn't be when we're talking about the Yankees. Also, this is something I kind of am not surprised about because of the amount of free agents they had. I think they're trying to do the same thing as the Mets right now, where they're trying not to make any stupid moves. Maybe we could get Bellinger back if we don't sign anybody dumb. Maybe they're so worried about a Skubal trade that they haven't even thought about signing lower level players yet. So that's where I'm at with them. My team, though, that I have number 3 is going to be their rivals, the Boston Red Sox. I love Sonny Gray. He was a winner for me. But everything else about Boston has been confusing for like a year and a half now. Just like San Diego, they've been rumored in the craziest trade talk ever, yet they let guys walk instead of dealing them. And now Bregman might actually be gone. The rumor is Arizona loves Bregman. They got the money ready. They're going to do a Ketel Marte trade. And that would be such a killer for the lineup. So they're basically forced to do this Jarren Duran trade right now, or they're going to have nobody left either. So I think they are a bigger loser than New York right now. The Yankees, not the Mets.
I also will say for the Yankees before I go on to the next point, I forgot to say this. It also feels like they're not involved in a ton of rumors right now. I know there's like Skubal, there's like the fans wanting schemes, but we know that's not really possible. But we haven't heard anything of like a Bregman or even a Kyle Tucker that we kind of expected them to be in on. And that's very un-Yankee like. Maybe they're, dealing under the reports, but with how reporting is in New York, I highly doubt that there's any big surprises that come there. My last loser that I only have 4, is free agents after next season. It feels like teams are very slow to hand out big money this year. I know, we saw big money for Alonso Schwarber, who goes back to his original team, so I don't think you see anything crazy there, and Dylan Cease. But outside of that, like we haven't seen a ton of rumblings on Kyle Tucker, and it's very rare. I feel like that we're getting to Christmas time, and we haven't seen any big time rumors with these guys yet, and that's very shocking to me. And I think that's because teams are scared to spend money with this looming lockout happening within the next year or two. I think it especially affects the starting pitching market. because starting pitchers are the most risky. They have the most injuries. They have the most variation in results. They have the biggest variation in the results also in regards to trends within the league. The league changes year in, year out. And one year you might be really good based off of what teams want to do with you. The next year you might not be what they want at all. And I think we're seeing teams be afraid to give out, 5-year, 125 to $150 million contracts to free agent starters, even in a year that we thought there'd be like 5 or 6 of those guys. So we thought there'd be plentiful amount of those type of, 2-3 starters in your rotation that could be really good. And we haven't seen, really any of those contracts go down yet, aside from Dylan Cease, who got paid ace money to the Blue Jays, which is understandable because his market moved fast. But I think outside of Skubal in next year's free agency, guys like Peralta, Shane Bieber, Jesus Luzardo, Brady Singer could be really struggling to get those big-time contracts that they were looking for, especially if you have injury history. Or maybe even if you don't have injury history. Maybe that means you're looming for an injury. Who knows? But I think free agent market next year is going to suck. I think you're going to see a lot of emphasis on guys trying to – I don't know if you can re-sign or obviously you can sign extensions, but trying to force themselves not to be a free agent next year is the idea.
That's a good point, a great point. Your average fan probably wouldn't understand is that even though the last lockout I think it killed spring training and then they were back after maybe a week off.
Mm-hmm.
But before that, it kills the entire season. So it's definitely a good point here. Maybe people are trying to either do too much or too little. It goes both ways. Trying to get ready for what in the world is going to happen next year.
Yeah. As we know, the MLB leadership is just I'm all for the in-game changes that they've made. The pitch clock's been really cool. The ABS has been really cool. Replay system that's happened within the last 10 years has been really cool, or maybe even 15 years at this point. But, man, if they're the big league that has 2 lockouts in the most recent – like the last 2 lockouts, if say we're 2028 and we look back the last 5 years, the only league that's had the 2 lockouts is the MLB. The NFL hasn't locked out. The NBA hasn't locked out since 2012. NHL, I don't know if they're going to lock out. To be honest with you, but
they're like, "Oh, dude, I don't care. I already lost all my teeth."
Exactly. They're not making too much money, anyways. But regardless, MLB, fix your shit, dude. That's all I got.
All right.
On to the second half.
So, Kyle, we got some pretty big names in the transfer portal already with quarterbacks. I thought we should talk about at least the top couple guys that are ranked really high, where we think maybe they're going to go. There've already been some pretty good rumors. So let's get right into it. The number 1 quarterback in the portal so far this offseason is going to be Brendan Sorsby of Cincinnati. Big dude, loves to run people over. I thought maybe this could be a Tyler Shuck type of prospect in this draft. He decides to go back to school, hit the portal, and yesterday his girlfriend transferred to Texas Tech. That was already a rumor that because Texas Tech has the most money, this guy's the best quarterback in the portal, at least by ranking. That would be a perfect fit. And now it seems like that's what's going to happen. So good for him. He gets to play on a big stage if it does go through. The number 2 guy, former 5-star, Dylan Raiola. I warned you about this like a month ago. Things were not good in Nebraska. Matt Rule is like, we're good, Dylan. You can go. He's leaving. Feels like this is the type of guy that is, on Dynasty mode. He's going to be all about his brand exposure. He's going to try to get the biggest possible deal, and it might not matter where he ends up. So I've heard a little Miami, a little Florida. I don't know if he's a Michigan guy. Probably not, in my opinion, but he wants to go somewhere where they can let him rip it.
What about the Chiefs? They need a quarterback.
Yeah. And by the way, everyone on Twitter is like, oh, Dylan Raiola finding out he has to hurt himself. He already broke his leg last month. It already happened.
Yeah.
So it's already confirmed. He is Patrick Mahomes. The next guy, maybe the biggest name on here, is going to be DJ Lagway, another 5-star from Florida. He's out of there. The only rumor I've heard so far is Baylor, and it's probably the same strategy as Dylan Raiola, right? He wants to play on TV. He wants to throw it 50 times a game. potentially and try to get into the NFL. Lagway is massive. He's 250 pounds and he can really sling it. So I'm hoping that he is more than an Anthony Richardson kind of guy. And we'll find out this year, wherever he goes. Today we find out Drew Metzemaker, another guy, North Texas, great freshman year. Of course, the first rumor is going to be Oklahoma State. That's where Eric Morris, his coach of this season, is going. But also, maybe someone gives him a bunch of money to leave as coach. It's possible. I mean, I'm definitely leaning Oklahoma State, but this guy was top 10 in passing yards as a freshman. He might get some serious money to go to a big school. So something to keep an eye on. And then Kenny Minchie was a Notre Dame backup. I like this guy a lot. He's from Tennessee, rumored to go back to Tennessee if they don't get Nico, a guy who has not made a decision yet. So interesting. We'll find out about that. And then one more guy I want to mention at the very end, only a 3-star right now, but used to be much higher. That's Aiden Childs of Michigan State. He doesn't have a lot of big numbers. Michigan State had a down year. They fired their coach, Jonathan Smith. But one thing this guy can do is run the pro-style offense, run a lot of play action. And that kind of thing doesn't exist in college football these days. So I'm sure if a team like Penn State really needs a quarterback who can run the pro-style, this could end up being a good fit. So far, so good. Those are 7 or so dudes who are going to have new homes in college football. Also, I didn't mention it here because he's not leaving, but Lenore Sellers back to South Carolina.
Yeah. In the MLB world, we did have some moves. I'll go through the big ones because there's a lot of really small ones in here. Starting off on December 10th, we saw Pete Alonso, of course, 5-year deal to the Orioles. We also saw Kyle Finnegan, who's good back-end reliever, go back to the Tigers on a 2-year deal. December 11th, we saw a bunch of 1-year deals. Lane Thomas, Colin Holderman, Holby Milner, guys like that. Robert Torres goes 3 years to the Braves that we talked about. And one kind of notable one, Akil Baddoo, major league contract with the Milwaukee Brewers. Didn't really seem like a major league contract guy for me, considering how he's not played a ton in the big leagues this past year. But maybe the Brewers see something that I don't. 12-12, Josiah Gray agrees to 1-year deal back with the Nationals, avoiding arbitration, which is good for him. He's been hurt. Tyler Rogers, 3-year deal with the Orioles. Blue Jays that we've kind of talked about. Alexis Diaz, Danny Jansen, and Tyler Alexander all signed 1-year or contracts with the Rangers. Danny Jansen's only 2-year one. And Christopher Morel goes to the Miami Marlins. Michael Garcia, big-time third baseman for the Kansas City Royals, inks a 5-year, $57 million extension. Alex thought it was a good contract before he even saw the money, which I thought was funny.
Alex said a lot of things this week that didn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah. 12-13, always a good day. Dustin May, 1-year contract to the St. Louis Cardinals. Ahmed Rosario goes back to the Yankees, which I mentioned briefly. Jorge Polanco signed a 2-year deal with the New York Mets. One of the more interesting trades that we've seen so far, Nick Mears and Isaac Collins goes to the Kansas City Royals for Angel Zerpa. Zerpa isn't anything crazy, but he is kind of like Jose Ferrer, who has that big tumbling sinker ball. And Isaac Collins, great year, but the underlying numbers aren't too crazy. He outperformed a lot of his expected metrics, so I don't think he's consistently going to be a Gold Glove, 800 OPS left fielder for you. Probably right around 700 OPS. Still good defense. Not going to be a crazy valuable guy. Nick Mears, interesting. I think he's pretty interesting reliever. Could be really good if things all work out, but that is if everything works out, which hasn't happened too often for him in his career. Kenley Jensen also signed a 1-year deal with the Detroit Tigers. Kind of interesting there. I don't know exactly how he will be used. 12-14, Merrill Kelly goes back to the Arizona Diamondbacks after a 3-month stint, or a 2-month stint probably, in Texas. 2-year deal there, kind of exactly what we expected for him money-wise. And then 12-15 yesterday, Adolis Garcia, 1-year deal with the Phillies. He takes that Nick Castellanos right field role. Josh Bell, 1-year deal with the Minnesota Twins. Carlos Santana role. Hassan Kim, 1-year deal, $20 million to the Braves. A bit of an overpay. But if you look at like 23-24, how he performed there before his injury, kind of lines up with that. So I think maybe teams were valuing him there. And then 12-16 today, bunch of smaller deals. Foster Griffin to the Nationals, which is one of those KBO guys, or maybe he came from the MPB, I forget. Jason Foley, 1-year deal with the Giants. Chris Martin, 1-year deal back with the Rangers. Caleb Thebar, 1-year deal back with the Cubs. Caleb Ferguson, 1-year deal to Cincinnati. Some smaller stuff there. That gets us all caught up to this current moment. Actually, we just got Jordan Romano, 1-year deal to the Angels like 4 minutes ago. So that's new there. But we're on to the layups, full predictions before we get on out of here. Last week was good for us. 3 out of 4 on our picks. I had for my layup the Eagles minus 11.5 versus the Raiders. Raiders put up 0 points. So Eagles won by 31 there. Skyler had Seattle minus 13.5. Old man Phillips said "fuck you" for a while there. Or actually, he did not say "fuck you." He would not say that. He said "frick you" or something like that. Yeah. But only a 2-point victory there, so that goes red, unfortunately. This week, I have Oregon minus 21 versus JMU. Another thing you could throw in there as well, too. Take whatever the Texans spread is against the Raiders. If the Raiders could score negative points, they would this week. I don't think we're putting up a single point against the Texans.
I'm sorry to hear that. It's like the roles have reversed with our teams. We both suck, but now it's our defense is the worst ever, and your offense is the worst you've ever seen.
As long as we lose out, I'm okay.
All right. All right. So, yeah, Phil Rivers, even though he looked like he was about 300 pounds, he could still sling it a little bit. My bad, guys. But I am going to talk about the 8-9 college football playoff game. I'm taking Oklahoma. It's a pick 'em plus 1.5. You know what, man? They beat him at Bryant-Denny. They can beat him at home. Alabama can't run the ball. Alabama looked terrible against Auburn, even though they won. So I'm going to take the Sooners. I don't feel bad about it either.
Last week, bold predictions 2 for 2 here for both of us. I had New Orleans money line versus the Panthers. That goes green plus 120. Skyler had number 17 Arkansas win at number 16 Texas Tech in college basketball. That goes green. This week, I can't take the Saints because they're not a dog anymore. They play the Jets. So I went with Carolina plus 130 versus Tampa Bay. They're at home. Both these teams have the same record. Carolina's played just kind of similar to their opponent this entire year. I think this is a good chance for Carolina to take advantage of, or them not to take advantage of the Lions because they can't do that, but us to take advantage of the Lions of a team that's very similar, being a dog at home.
Yeah. I am going to take a similar strategy here. NFL game. We got Sunday Night Football. New England going to Baltimore. It's also plus 130. But here's the thing. When I watch Baltimore, I feel like they can't move the ball unless they're playing a horrendous defense. And even, you mentioned it earlier, even against the Jets, they played rough. So I'm going to say New England bounces back. Even though their schedule may not be as tough as Baltimore, they are coming off of a very embarrassing situation against Buffalo. So I think they're going to want to get their head back on straight to finish off this season. So I'm going to take New England on the road.
All right, that'll do it. Next week, 274, probably some MLB stuff. We'll know what happens in the first round of the college football playoff, which will be cool. We will be 2 weeks away from the NFL playoffs, or I guess technically 3 weeks, but 2 games left to play in the NFL season. We were not from the future, but hopefully our bets hit. And power rankings, maybe, the kind of lines.
Last one.
Any closing remarks?
Warriors are a mess, dude. It's hard to watch.
And something coming up in future weeks as well, too, which will be fun that we always do. QB predictions for the next year. Maybe we wait until the season's over, but should be fun. Anyways, we'll see you guys then. I don't know what to say. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, Kyle.